Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time. And it's a very special edition as we're kicking off our All 90s Bond mini-series, where we look at the three 90s Bond films, starting with 1995's Goldeneye. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Murphy, and joining me on this Bond adventure, we have my regular co-host. You know who he is. He's a screenwriter, a comedian, and a rogue spy. It's Mr. Craig Draheim. Hey, Craig.
If I want sarcasm, Mr. Murphy, I'll talk to my children. Thank you very much.
That's a good one. That's a good one. It's not what I expected to pull from, but yeah, okay, well done. Plus, we have a very special returning guest in the form of 90s expert, wine connoisseur, and a man who always knows how to make a big entrance. It's Schwitter, Brandon Schwitter. Hey Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hello, I am a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, and I just wanted to use my Connery voice before we talk about Brosnan. Hi everyone.
Hey, that's not a bad Connery voice. I like it.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll get more Connery voice as the episode goes on. Now, on to today's film, which was released on the 17th of November, 1995. Oddly for a Bond movie, it was released in the US before it was in the UK on the 24th of November. It was directed by Martin Campbell, who would also go on to direct The Mask of Zorro and would return to the Bond franchise with Casino Royale, and as well as directing many other things. Some great, as I've just mentioned, some not so great, like The Green Lantern. The screenplay was co-written by Jeffrey Kane, who would also go on to write The Constant Gardener, and Bruce Firestein, who would rejoin the franchise for Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and apparently also wrote 4 Bond video games. Oh. With a story by Michael France, who is best known for his work in comic book films. He wrote the screenplays for the likes of The Hulk, The Punisher, Fantastic Four, and a movie we've already covered, Cliffhanger. Obviously not a comic book film, but just a movie we've covered. Critically, it is currently sitting on a 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 83 reviews, 65 on Metacritic based on 19 reviews, and it has a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Box office wise, it made a cool $356.4 million off of a $60 million budget, making it the third biggest film of 1995. There's all your fun facts out of the way. So, who wants to go first? Brandon, as our very special guest. Tell us about your relationship to Goldeneye.
Well, you just helped me with a new one with Bruce Firestein, because he wrote the games for Everything or Nothing, From Russia with Love, and the terrible remake of Goldeneye. So now I know why some parts of Goldeneye I don't agree with. But Goldeneye, so, my age, Goldeneye was the first Bond movie to be released when I was alive, I think, technically. I don't remember exactly when. In 1989, The Living Daylights came out. No, the other one.
License to Kill.
License to Kill. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Brosnan's my first Bond-ish, kind of, cause I didn't see it in theater. I was probably 6. I don't think my parents took me to see this in theaters. But in the US, we had, not Spike TV. Was it Spike TV?
That was
I think it used to be called TNN, back in the day, and they would do, at Christmas or Thanksgiving time, they would do a James Bond marathon. So all the James Bond movies would be on TV. So then I would naturally watch Goldeneye, because that's the one that I was familiar with, having a Nintendo 64, and the game GoldenEye 007, which came out 2 years after this film.
And Craig?
Yeah, so I'm in the similar camp where I think Pierce Brosnan was my first Bond. And I know I did see it in theaters. I remember it being kind of one of those where I'm sure I watched other big movies at that time, but that this was the first where it was like a huge kind of the realization, I guess, of a huge blockbuster movie. With all the different landscapes or the different whatever it may be. But yeah, and then it kind of just grew because it pops up on television even to this day a lot. And then the video game, of course, it was, everybody was playing it, and it was just kind of for Nintendo 64. It was one of the biggest games, and so that's how I connect to it. And I think, for Pierce Brosnan, even after the Daniel Craig, or even after I've seen other ones, I'm kind of in that boat. I feel like people are with Batman of a certain age, where they're like, their Batman is Michael Keaton or whoever, where like, oh, Pierce Brosnan is James Bond. And that's just what it is. Everybody else is just kind of, and it's not even because he's the best Bond. It's just, that's who I associate with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I think because like in the UK, basically Bond would be on like any bank holiday Monday or any like kind of any time you were off school, Bond would be on. Not so much in the kind of summer holidays, but like if there was a bank holiday or like particularly at Christmas, Bond movies were all kind of always on over the Christmas period. So this wasn't the first Bond that I saw, and I didn't see it at the cinemas. It's the first new Bond that I was aware of, because I remember like it coming out, because I'm slightly older than the two of you. I was born in 1985, so 2 Bonds had been released in my lifetime before this, but because they were released in 87 and 89, I wasn't really aware of them. So yeah, this is the first Bond that I was kind of aware of, like it being kind of advertised and like Pierce Brosnan kind of being unveiled as Bond and stuff like that. So as soon as it was available to kind of rent, I rented it. And like you say, because we are of a similar-ish age, very much the N64 GoldenEye game was something I played a lot, like going around to friends' houses and stuff like that, because I didn't have an N64, I had a PlayStation. And I wasn't one of those kids that their parents could just buy them every console. That's kind of, and yeah, I guess like I have a strong association with Pierce Brosnan as Bond, even if he's not the best Bond, although he's not. I think sometimes people look back on it, and obviously because people really love Daniel Craig now, and obviously Connery is kind of the Bond, and obviously being Scottish, Connery is my Bond, really, I think people kind of shit on the Brosnan era, kind of, or him as Bond, kind of unfairly, because I think he is a good Bond. Like, he's not, some of his movies kind of decrease in quality as we go forward, as we will learn in other episodes. But I think he is a decent Bond.
I would say with him, especially rewatching this one, he's definitely, there's this part of him that he almost handles the winking at the camera better than some of them, even the more the or the, better Bonds, I'd
Cheesier.
say. Yeah. It's and he like has that sexual energy that I think, which, all Bonds kind of have in a way, but him, especially Goldeneye, I was like, oh, wow, he's like just breathing sex right now.
To be fair.
This whole thing.
Yeah. To be fair, watching this film, rewatching this film for the first time in a little while, it did strike me. Now, like, Pierce Brosnan wasn't just like a young man when this was made. Pierce Brosnan, like when this was released, he would have been around 42, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like rewatching this, it did strike me, what a ridiculously handsome man Pierce Brosnan is. I was like, it's ludicrous. I mean, obviously that's why he's a movie star, but I was just thinking, wow. He is just a dashingly handsome man.
I mean, if you ever need cold water to pour over yourself while watching this, just remember Mamma Mia.
I guess so. That is true. Yeah.
But, coming off of Dalton, I think he did a great job of combining like the action hero Dalton era Bond with the like Roger Moore punny, always putting on a joke at every possible punchline, Bond. So I feel like he's a good amalgamation of those two. I don't really get much of a Connery off of him except for the, as you guys are saying, raw animal sexual magnetism thing going on.
Yeah, so that's true. No, you're right.
It's a good distillation.
Yeah, I think it is that mixture of kind of the DNA of the kind of brawny action man kind of Dalton and the kind of more kind of corny one-liner kind of Moore. I think that's a good summation of like kind of what Bronson is as Bond. We should also mention, even though we kind of said before the episode started we're not going to go too deep into like Bond lore and stuff like that. We're going to try and concentrate on Goldeneye so the episode's not 5 hours long. We should mention a couple of brief points. One, there is a kind of myth around like License to Kill. License to Kill was a failure and it kind of killed off the franchise and it took ages to come back. That's not true. License to Kill was a modest success. It wasn't as big a success as some of the other Bond films, but it was still a success. It was still a box office success. And it was really, there was like a legal issue, between, Cubby Broccoli's, production company and MGM, who had like a kind of takeover, and there was a thing to do with like distribution rights, and there was like, suit and countersuit and stuff like that kind of held up production, because there was supposed to be another Dalton Bond movie that to come out in like 1991, and then Dalton didn't officially kind of say resign the role until about 94. And also, Pierce Brosnan was going to be Bond much earlier, because when they were making The Living Daylights, which ended up being the first Dalton movie, that was going to be Pierce Brosnan in the role.
Oh, wow. But
Pierce Brosnan couldn't get out of his Remington Steele contract, so he could not play Bond at that stage. So, there we go. Like, the machinations of Bond history.
Well, I just want to thank you, Scott, because now I have Gladys Knight's License to Kill stuck in my head, and that's all I'm going to be able to think of for the next 2 hours.
Excellent.
Got a license to kill.
I always thought
I'm going straight for your heart.
Okay, let's have that conversation.
License to kill.
Okay. Well, that can be like a little mini-sode where we do Brandon sings Bond themes.
Oh, I had the CD growing up of all the Bond themes. Yeah.
So this is an interesting thing, because I always thought License to Kill was one of the weaker Bond themes. What do you both think of the theme song for this one?
For Goldeneye?
So, I didn't mind it. I was actually surprised. I don't know why. I'm so used to that orchestra-based Bond score, and there's such like a digital element, especially the score underneath it, kind of. But then the theme, the Goldeneye. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I think because I have it was more nostalgia, or it wasn't the best Bond theme, but again, from the opening, it really has that sexual energy because you have all the silhouettes of the women, nude, and the smoke coming out as the bullets are hitting, and And it's a nice little one to sing. It was stuck in my head afterwards.
Oh yeah, GoldenEye always gets stuck in my head afterwards. I think for me, for my money, it's not top tier. It's not like You Know My Name, Goldfinger, Live and Let Die, Nobody Does It Better, You Only Live Twice. It's not like kind of top tier, but it's kind of just below that. You know, it's I think it's a pretty good one, and I think like Tina Turner kind of does her best, kind of Shirley Bassey. So yeah, I think it's a good one.
No disrespect to Tina Turner, but it's not my favorite. Even of the Brosnan era, I think the only one that's worse than this is Madonna's. This is my favorite of the Brosnan era of the opening credit theme songs. Mm-hmm. No, it's not bad, but like you were saying, it's middling. It's at best. It's not like it's something that I'm going to listen to on repeat.
I've listened to it a few times this week. Like, what would you say is the best of the Brosnan era? Because, like, I think like they basically decrease in quality as they go on.
I think it's either The World's Not Enough or Live or Not Love and Let Die. What's
Tomorrow Never Dies? The Cheryl Cole.
Cheryl, that one gets stuck in my head. Okay. I think it might be that one.
Of the Bronson era, this is the one I listen to most.
Actually, I think it's The World's Not Enough because it's more orchestral.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
and I'm sure we could save this for that episode. But,
I'm sure we could. Yeah, we'll discuss the theme songs of each Bond movie as we go, because the theme song is an integral part of the Bond formula is the theme song.
I think. Craig brought up a good point. The gun barrel scene for the intro of the movie, the James Bond theme is like weirdly techno in that part of the movie, and it really threw me off. I'm like, what are we watching? Like The Matrix or something? Like, it was very 90s techno influenced Bond theme for this part.
For some reason, when I first heard it, like, wait, is there something wrong with my audio?
Yes, me too. I didn't remember it being all like, because I knew Moby did a version of the Bond theme song, and I think it was for Goldeneye, or it's for one of these four, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the first two, because it's also on that CD that I was talking about. Yeah. So this might have been the Moby version of the James Bond theme song.
Okay.
But bad. It's not good.
Yeah.
As someone that doesn't like letting the bass drop.
GoldenEye does have quite a weird score. There's kind of like a kind of industrial kind of feel to it.
There's a lot of techno.
Yeah, a lot of techno, electronic, but a lot of kind of that kind of, you know, an industrial kind of those kind of metal clanking sounds like that. It's got a bit of a strange score. The last thing I wanted to talk about, the theme song, is now you hear this theme song, and do you have any thoughts when you hear this theme song? When you hear the lyrics, do you have any thoughts?
Goldeneye.
Yeah, I could not.
Sorry. Goldeneye. Nope, I can't do it. Goldeneye.
So here's the thing. I always wondered, did they commission the theme song before they wrote the movie? Because the theme song suggests that Goldeneye is a person, and therefore you assume, it's probably like the villain of the movie, and that Goldeneye. Spoiler alert! No, it's a fucking satellite laser. Like that's what Goldeneye is. Not the main villain of the movie, but very much in the song. The song lyrics: Goldeneye, I found his weakness. Goldeneye, heal, do what I please. Goldeneye, no time for sweetness. But I better guess will bring him to his knees.
Yeah, but there's also, you'll never know how I watched you from the shadows as a child. You'll never know how it feels to be the one who's left behind. Like, you could see how that's like a satellite. You'll never know the days, the nights, the tears I've cried. It's cold in space. There's condensation.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. No, you've made the argument. Okay. Well, we're all convinced now that.
I mean, I always assume in every single Bond theme song that they're singing about James Bond or the villain, I guess, but.
No, because like Goldfinger, they sing about the villain. Man with a Golden Gun, they sing about the villain. So like, when the first time I heard this,
what about You Only Live
before
Twice,
I saw the movie, I thought they were singing about the villain.
That's fair. Is Goldeneye Trevelyan?
No, he's never referred to as Goldeneye.
That's true.
He's always referred to as 006 or Trevelyan.
Well, I mean, think about Die Another Day. I don't think Madonna got a clue of what the film was about when she wrote that song, quote unquote, wrote that song.
Let's not talk about Die Another Day. We don't have to talk about Die Another Day. It's not a 90s Bond film.
It has wronged me so much that it is my least favorite Bond theme song and movie that I will gladly just fill 2 hours of this Goldeneye episode complaining about Die Another Day.
Let's not, because like, I agree. I think it's the worst movie. I think it's the worst theme song. Let's move on. We don't have to. It came out in 2002. This is a 90s podcast. It's fine. We can just leave it. We don't have to cover it. There's no pain involved.
Something's wrong on the internet. So where are we going?
No, so what I was going to bring up is, Scott, you were talking about that this was the first one that was kind of released in the States first, I guess.
I think License to Kill might have been as well. Okay. So it might not be the first one.
And it's in my head again.
Yeah. But I was going to say, for some reason watching it this time, it did feel oddly more Americanized than I think than prior Bond films. In some ways, I was like, oh, there's kind of a lot of American influence in this one. I forgot about, or even the agent watching it, I was like, oh yeah, there's the CIA agent. But he plays a bigger part than I remembered.
We'll talk about that in a bit as well. The CIA agent, because that's quite funny. It's weird because I get there is an American influence. Although this is actually kind of taking Bond back to his roots, because so he doesn't get the theme song stuck in his head again. The previous film...
You'll never know. Oh wait, wrong one.
The previous film, the 1989 Dalton film, is probably the most American of all the Bond movies. Because, like, it's, like, most of it's set in Florida. It could be an episode of Miami Vice.
So true.
Yeah. I should admit that I stole that observation from Junk Food Cinema. If people are listening to Junk Food Cinema, they're doing a great Bond series over there.
They even did the rolled up sleeves at one point. Oh my god.
So that is a stolen observation. I should. But what was I saying? Yes, that's the most American one. That was the point of that. But yeah, no, they obviously were kind of trying to make it more international, less. There's a very Britishness to most of the Bond movies up until the kind of Dalton era, and then you get that, and then this again is like obviously skewing towards like a more kind of American market as well as the British European market.
You say that, but I've always felt that the Bond movies felt very like American. Like they're produced by MGM in association with United Artists, and I've always felt like most of the stuff has been here. I know he's British. I know it's a British agent, but it really feels like commercially it's an American brand. And
it has a lot of the British, like particularly you mentioned you like the Roger Moore era. We should start talking about the movie soon. You mentioned you like the Roger Moore era, particularly a lot of that kind of double entendre sex humor. Like that's very British. Like just like the way the character's played is very British.
The essence, I get you.
certain kind of ticks and certain, and also like we discussed off air that it has a kind of British imperialistic kind of worldview that's a bit unnerving. But yeah, that also kind of makes it very British.
But again, not too different from American colonization as well.
Also, like Bond is like the differentiation between like kind of British and American cinema. Like Bond would not be presented as a straightforward hero in American cinema.
He would be like a gritty counter.
Because he would be like he'd be like Dirty Harry, or he'd be like some kind of gritty anti-hero or whatever. He would not be played playfully in American cinema. Like, cause that just wouldn't make sense in an American context. He would have to be like a gritty alcoholic, anti-hero. He wouldn't
instead
be
of
Bond.
a government agent.
Gotcha. Yeah. Whereas, cause it always amused me, it's like the kind of, the hero that America created for itself was Superman. That's its idealistic kind of like, that's what it looks up to. We look up to Bond, a burnout alcoholic with a crippling sex addiction. You know, like, it's an interesting thing.
Well, yeah, no, that makes sense, because it seems like if Bond was over here, he would have the head of, you know, the agency telling him to turn in the badge, or, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Take him off, and would go rogue, and, you know, like we see with, as we talked about with Mission Impossible 1 or whatever, where it's like every Mission Impossible, he has to go rogue.
Exactly. So we've been on for about half an hour, and we've talked about none of the film apart from the theme tune, which we covered very well. I feel very well. The theme tune, which I realised when reading the credits, was written by Bono and the Edge, which I was not aware of before, or had maybe forgotten.
Irish Bond, Irish theme writer.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah.
We did talk about the opening gun barrel theme.
Yes. So we've done well. We've talked about the theme tune and the opening gun barrel.
We're just mirroring the movie, because the intro to this movie is so slow.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So I think when we're talking kind of great pre-credit sequences, obviously probably the best pre-credit sequences is, you know, the most iconic is probably The Spy Who Loved Me, with the ski chase followed by the Union Jack parachute.
That's a good one. Yes.
So that's probably kind of top of the mountain, but that's pretty good it's maybe, like you say, it's maybe a little slow, but the initial bungee jump in this is pretty cool as a stunt. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That grabs you into the movie.
Well, and I agree. And I mean, again, I don't know if it's probably is the nostalgia speaking and the video game itself, but this is one that is always stands out to me, because it has the plane. It has 006, that whole stuff, but so it's not the best I've seen, but for some reason, when I think of a opening credit Bond, like a pre-credit Bond sequence, I think of this one for some reason, because I've seen it so much.
I just, having played the video game probably more than having watched this movie, it's faster in the game.
It is, yeah.
Like the getting to the bungee jump point, that's longer, but that's, a video game. But it just at the time, I'll give you, at the time, that was a great sequence, well shot, good stunt, but nowadays it's very, there's a lot going on. You can't, obviously it's not Pierce Brosnan doing the stunt, but they didn't, like, it's a guy wearing a Pierce Brosnan wig doing the stunt. And, it feels a little dated, but I guess it was 27 years ago at this point. 27? Did I do my math right?
Yeah, 27.
God, we're old.
Yeah, no, we are. It's okay. That's why we have nostalgia podcasts. So young people don't have such things. Yes. Anyway, I think overall I do still like the pre-credit sequence, and I think that it kind of quickly establishes, or maybe as Brandon's indicating, not so quickly establishes, the tone of the film and what we're doing. Like, because I know that we kind of skip to the present day after this, because it has a kind of thing of like 9 years later. But we're trying to get into this weapons facility that's like a Soviet-run weapons facility and stuff like that. So it's kind of immediately indicating to the audience like where we're at, and we're kind of like, oh, we're going back to Bond's roots. He's fighting the Russians again, and then we also have him like entering via like a toilet cubicle, and he's got like a quippy line with the guy in the toilet cubicle, and then when he's talking to Trevelyan, he's like, oh, I had to stop at the toilet, and it's like, oh, we're doing kind of Moore kind of quippiness again. That's what we're we're doing that again. So
and it never stops.
So, yes. It's I mean, we're it's all quips. The screenplay is just all quips, which I don't mind. I don't mind that. But I think it just kind of gives you very much what this Bond is going to be like and what this movie is going to be like, and kind of where we're at with the character.
One thing that was interesting, you mentioned it is a 9-year time jump, and as we all accept, this Bond is the same as Connery's Bond or Moore's Bond or Dalton's Bond. So it's like, did this occur before like Dr. No, and then there's the 9-year time jump, or like, is this a time jump from before the Living Daylights to after?
So, yes, I think the time jump would be the 9 years prior to 1995. So we're jumping, so which would be 1986, which would be the year before the Living Daylights. This happened the year before the Living Daylights.
Okay. Yeah. Which is it confusing? It's not confusing. It's the James Bond timeline. I know it's not something that we need a deep dive on. It's just, when I was watching the movie, I'm like, it made me sit and think for a little while before the bombs went off.
Yep. It is confusing. It's too confusing to like, I mean, we would end up with, like that meme that she always used from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like that's
Charlie. Yeah.
So I'll also say, and I know it comes up later on, and so I know the Bond formula. Because I know beforehand, Scott, you were talking about potentially bringing that up. The Bond formula is one that I know, but
unlike the Seagal formula, you're a student of the Bond formula.
Yeah. So I can watch these and be like, oh yeah, it's good or whatever, just enjoy them. But watching it this time, I think in depth, and his relationship to 006, and then his reactions later on, and the guilt that he feels, although it doesn't really seem like he's haunted by it until he talks about it once or something. But like, they haven't really established any sort of relationship between these two. It's just kind of, oh, okay, we're just running with this. Yeah. I feel like that should have been brought up more from the storyteller part of me.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think kind of Sean Bean and Pierce Brosnan kind of do the best with what they got in that regard, and kind of show off the friendship and the kind of mutual loyalty they have for each other, kind of in that opening scene, because that's basically all they get to kind of establish, like, oh, they're close friends, and like. But Pierce Brosnan, I guess, like you said about him not being kind of too broken up about it, or not seeming too broken up about it until the plot asks him to be. I guess Pierce Brosnan's like very good at some things as an actor, and not very good at other things. Like, he's very, very good at like doing the kind of roguish Irish charm thing. Like,
Yeah.
he's a master of that. He is a master of quips. He knows how to do all the one-liners. He's got great comic timing. He's pretty good in action sequences. He's good at kind of looking and being manly. Kind of existential crisis stuff. It's not really his wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah.
He made a frowny face.
Yeah.
Was that not enough to convey something?
Because even I'm going to jump way ahead, but, when she's talking to him on the beach about it.
When he's pounding on the rocks.
Yeah, I was like, what, why is this scene in here besides him then force kissing her? Like, seems to be the only reason why this whole section's in here.
Classic Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how, like, just as a little side point, we shouldn't have too many more of these, I guess. But I love how people always mention how, like, progressive Craig's Bond is compared to Bonds of the past. And I'm like, yeah, but also in Skyfall there is a scene where he walks into a woman's shower expecting sex. So,
yeah. At least Dalton never forcefully bed a woman or any woman during his tenure.
I guess so. And he didn't. Unlike the likes of, as much as Connery is my favourite Bond, at least he didn't, slap around women or anything. That's always a good thing.
Whenever I think of Connery, I always think of like the episode of Star Trek where Kirk forcefully kisses a woman and then punches her like within 5 seconds of that happening, and that's just every Connery Bond to me.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were going to bring up the yellow face from You Only Live Twice, which is...
No, I forgot about that.
Okay, no. Okay. Let's move on.
Yes.
Let's move on from disturbing racism.
Oh my God,
we're not going to go through the whole plot, like we sometimes do. We're going to kind of cherry pick kind of sequences and stuff like that. But, we've got the opening sequence. So we'll kind of look at the opening sequence because...
I just want to say that's not how gravity works, and that's everything for that.
Yes. Okay. So, really quick version. They get into the facility, they get caught. He puts the timer to 3 minutes, even though it was supposed to be a 6-minute bomb timer. And 006, he thinks I just spoiled it if you haven't watched it, but it gets spoiled anyways pretty soon. He thinks gets killed, and then he runs out shooting.
Runs to a plane that's taking off.
Then he skydives into the plane as it's falling, and that's our opening.
It's good times. And then, as we've discussed, we get the theme song with all the nude ladies dancing in shadow like we normally do. That
was the first fully digital intros too, wasn't it?
Yes, this is the first.
We didn't mention that. Yeah,
this is the first time with the Bond franchise is like using like CGI. So it's like that's the first digital one, I believe. And then in the kind of opening sequence after the credits, we get this kind of mainly comedy scene with this psychological evaluator who's apparently evaluating Bond while he drives her around in an Aston Martin. That seems like a weird place to do the appointment, but
it's a classic DB5.
Yeah, it's the classic Aston Martin DB5
in the French Alps.
And then we have like a race with Xenia Onatopp. Which he hadn't been formally introduced yet, but they have some glances back and forth, and basically race around, and it looks like they disrupt the Tour de France. Basically they fuck up the whole of the Tour de France. All the cyclists fall down as they're racing around these Monaco roads like mad people. And, despite the fact that the psychological evaluator for most of the trip seems unimpressed by Bond, she is immediately seduced by a bottle of champagne, which is odd. But this is a Bond film, so we're just going with that logic.
So, with Onatopp, what's interesting though, I guess.
Yeah,
is
you have to say it with a question mark and a raised eyebrow. Onatopp?
On the top?
Yeah. This is one of those moments where because I haven't seen besides, this one in clips, and I forgot her name. But all the older ones.
How could you forget her name?
But so I've seen a similar Bond-like film, Austin Powers, a lot more. And watching this, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I thought that was for some reason in my head, like, oh, Austin Powers is making it so farcical. Like, oh no. Nope, we didn't. It was pretty similar.
Scott, would you like to inform Craig who the main woman of Goldfinger was?
The main henchman woman of Goldfinger was Pussy Galore.
Yeah.
Also, the main love interest in The Spy Who Loved Me was Agent Triple X, and
yes.
And Octopussy is a character in the film Octopussy.
Yes. Upcoming for The World Is Not Enough, we have Christmas Jones, who I believe, I'm sorry to spoil 2 episodes from now, but Christmas comes more than once a year, apparently.
But, so I realized this watching.
Which is a line from the movie.
And I was reminded, but for some reason all of this stuff keeps going out of my head with all these Bond movies. That I was like, I had to reintroduce myself to it. Oh yeah, that's a thing. Okay, we gotta keep going now.
Yes, that is very much a thing. Ridiculous female character names is very much a thing. And as I said, every time we say her name, we have to say it like that. Onatopp.
But she is probably one of the, I always see in rankings and stuff, she's one of the higher ranked villains to come out of a Bond movie, or henchman, or whatever.
Yeah, I think she's one of the best hench people. I think we talked about the Goldeneye theme song, as being not top tier, but maybe kind of second mid tier. Very much Onatopp is top tier hench, like she's right up there with like your Rosa Klebs and your Odd Jobs and your Jaws. Like she's high up.
Yeah.
For my money.
And that's because of Famke Janssen's over the top commitment to the character.
Oh boy.
Also, I like until recently I didn't realize that she played or that's the same woman who played in the X-Men movies, Jean Grey. Never put 2 and 2 together, and it's been like 20 years. And it was just like, it was recently, I'm just like, huh.
Because, she is very different from all the other roles she was kind of cast in around that time period, yeah.
Right? Like, I've never seen her try to scissor someone to death in another movie.
That is true. But like there's some great edits as well. Just like in this kind of sequence where they meet at the casino and stuff like that, and then he's kind of spying on her and the Admiral, and Bond gets a message from the fax machine radio from Moneypenny, and I think they make a reference to being kind of on the top of things, and then immediately it cuts to like Onatopp sleeping with the Admiral and kind of roughing him up. And then just as she climaxes, it immediately cuts to like a speedboat revving up its engine. So there's a very, very excellent editing work here going on.
I don't know if excellent's the right word, but definitely cheeky. Also, I liked Bond's line. I think he said, "I love a woman who enjoys pulling rank."
Yes.
She went off with the Admiral. Also, does anyone here actually know how to play Baccarat?
No, I do not.
No.
Okay. Just checking. I was just making sure, because I also do not know how to play Baccarat, and I've always seen it in these movies and never, like, Le Bon. That's all I know. That's something. I don't know if I won. But yeah, so she kills the man as she's orgasming, and a speedboat sprays water, and we're onto the helicopter stealing.
Yeah.
Yes. She steals a helicopter. Which actually, fun fact, because I was watching kind of the behind the scenes, that helicopter was a prototype helicopter that they got a lend of from the French government.
Oh, wow.
It does look very French. Oh, because it was actually in the French. That all makes sense, because they were in the French Alps in the car scene. They were Monaco.
They're in Monaco. Yeah, so they actually borrowed that from the French. That was a real prototype that was going to be put into service like in the kind of 2000s. Because it was just at the prototype stage, and it was just at the testing stage at that time in the mid-90s.
Like how all Bond does to stop them is tries to run past the French military to stop the helicopter. Like, say something.
Yeah. Yes, probably that would have been better, but you know.
I thought about that watching, because he just watches it go, fly off, and he kind of huffs.
Yeah.
Why don't you say, hey, somebody stole your helicopter?
You've got to understand that Bond is a great action hero. He is a manly man. He can fight anyone. He can, he knows how to shoot. He knows how to, basically get out of a sticky situation. So he's a great action hero, but he's a terrible spy. So that's too spy-like for Bond.
I thought
hey.
I thought you were going to say this iteration of Bond can only speak in puns and witty retorts. So
that is
there was nothing. There was nothing he could say while the helicopter was flying away to make any sexual innuendo.
I did enjoy.
I was going to move on to the basically, we'll kind of skip over some stuff. Basically, the Goldeneye satellite is stolen by General Omarov, who we saw in the pre-credit scene, who apparently killed Alec Trevelyan, who, spoiler alert, will come back. And we're introduced to the person who's going to be the Bond girl, the good Bond girl, Natalia, and Boris, the hacker, played by Scottish actor Alan Cumming.
Yes.
We're a small country. We always have to put out in front that our actors are in. One of our other actors will be coming up, and I will also again say Scottish actor.
Alan Cumming, best known as Loki in Son of the Mask.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Fegan Floop in the Spy Kids trilogy. No, sorry. I actually really enjoyed him. I believe he's in Josie and the Pussycats.
He is?
Oh yeah, he is.
Yes.
Yes, indeed he is. And I think he does a really good job here, for what he's got, kind of thing. Like, his character is fun. Basically, he's got his catchphrase, "I am invincible," and that's kind of fun. And, even though he's clearly an incel. That would not be a term that existed in 1995, but that's clearly what he is.
Also the poster child for sexual harassment in the Russian workplace.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. He is very much the Silicon Valley stereotype of a geeky guy who has real bad women issues.
And calls people slugheads.
Yes, that was a strange choice.
Yeah, that's a strange. I guess they're looking for a kind of PG rating or whatever, or maybe a 12. I can't remember what it was. So I guess they're trying to be not have lots of bad language or something. And I don't know. Despite all the sexy
killing,
stuff,
the sex foo, as I wrote in my notes.
Yes, we'll get to that, and we'll also get to some of the kind of, basically, this movie tries to make some commentary on the kind of the regressive sexual politics of the Bond films, and then immediately undercuts itself.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good juxtaposition. You saw how bad sexual harassment was rampant in Russian workplaces, in secret Russian facilities, and then you get to look at MI6 and Moneypenny flirts back and also shuts down Bond's sexual harassment, and Judi Dench, I'm sure we are about to talk about.
Yeah. No,
yeah, but like the Moneypenny thing is kind of even more problematic because it's like, so Moneypenny, she kind of shuts down Bond's advances. Well done. And then she says, oh, that could be construed as sexual harassment. Okay, yes. It could. But then she says a line about, oh, one day you'll have to kind of put into action your words kind of thing.
You'll have to, you have to pay up on your innuendos or finally.
Yeah. Which is like, okay. So that's almost encouraging sexual harassment. So by the end, she's encouraging sexual harassment after shutting it down.
Then she flips again and he says, what would I ever do without you? Or what would I ever, do without you? And she goes, well, Bond, you've never had me, or something like that.
That is true. So
can I just say
they're not dealing with it well.
Can I just say, Samantha Bond is I think the best Moneypenny.
She's really good as Moneypenny. I like Samantha Bond as Moneypenny, and her kind of, and I think she has really good chemistry with Brosnan. And as much as like, there is a certain level of ickiness that we've just discussed about some of the lines. Like her kind of banter with Brosnan is funny. It feels funny, and then you think about it afterwards. You think like, oh, some of those lines are not.
You kind of hope that they're friends outside of the workplace.
Yeah, you kind of hope so.
That's why they
they can do that. That's permissible because they're actually close friends and they would never. It's fine. Well, anyway, we also get M, who calls Bond a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, and then that's immediately undercut because she's like, oh, I don't care about you, I don't care if you die, but I'm not going to put your life at risk for nothing kind of thing. And also, calling them a sexist, misogynistic dinosaur. And then she has like this kind of glint of kind of love in her eye and kind of like, come back home safe, Bond, kind of thing. And you're like, what? That's kind of weird. Like a minute ago, you're like, you don't like me, I don't like you. And now you're all best buddies. I don't think somebody's thought through this script fully.
I think I don't know. I felt like that was like a professional respect. Like she doesn't think that he should exist because it's post Cold War, but he still serves under her, so she has to like care about him in that regard. I would kind of think that, but it's also the way Judi Dench plays it. Because, like, when he's going out the door, when she glances at him, she has a kind of girlish glint in her eye, which seems kind of like, what? Why is that? Oh, she's waiting for the sexual innuendo.
Yeah, I guess so, yes. The pun that doesn't come.
And, I think as M, her character does evolve a little bit in these movies, and obviously way more in the Craig movies, to be more than just like, oh, there's a woman M now.
Yes. That is true, which a lot of is made of that, because obviously this is the first time we've had a female M, and, loads of comments are made about that, and obviously it's kind of the sexism of the time of being like, oh, imagine a woman in authority. Although, it kind of reflected what was actually happening in the UK, where I think that was the time where, I can't remember her name now, but there was a female head of MI6. Right, fine.
Yeah, in MI5, Stella Remington.
Remington, yes.
In 1992.
Yes, that's, so, and she was the head for like a long time. Also, we get another fun part of the Bond formula, because we're back at MI6 headquarters, and you know what that means. We get a visit from Q. We get to go to Q's lab, and Q is got a leg cast on, which turns out is actually a firing like bazooka thing. And I love all the visits to Q's lab, and I love this visit to Q's lab because we get some essential Bond components. First of all, there's Q himself, who in this film is still played by Desmond Llewellyn, the only returning actor to the Bond franchise in this film. Well, not the only returning actor, but the only returning kind of mainstay. There is another actor who's been in another Bond film, but we'll discuss that in a minute. And we also get gadgets, that come up as later plot points. That's always fun. And another essential Bond component, product placement, because we get a nice rundown of a new BMW car, and also in the background we get a BT phone box. So obviously British Telecommunications was one of the sponsors of the Bond film this time. We get one of the other sponsors in a later scene, but we'll discuss that later.
I know which one you're talking about. Was that a Z3 or an M4? The Bond car. I can't remember because the Z3s came out around that time too. Mm-hmm. And I probably should have Googled it before I came here. But, how do you guys feel about the Bond car? Like, cause they gave us the DB5 at the beginning, and, then they gave us, it was a Z3. Okay. Yeah. And those were just getting onto the market at that time, and were like they became super popular for like a span of 10 years or so. But looking back on them, those sucked. That's not a Bond car. That's a Mazda Miata.
Yeah, it's not a kind of iconic Bond car, is it? I mean, I guess I always associate it with like the Aston Martins and stuff like that. So like,
time dilation.
No, I thought the Bond car, I remember, I guess as you were saying, Brandon, seeing them a lot as kind of, a fancy car during the time, but then, I think it didn't really age as well in comparison to, the other Bond cars that really pop up. It's just kind of there, and it doesn't seem like they spend a lot of time with it either. It's just,
yeah. I don't remember if I know they use another BMW in the next movie. I don't know if it's a Z3, but, they're like, oh, there's Stinger missiles behind the headlights, and we never see the Stinger missiles.
Yeah.
In action.
I'm pretty sure throughout the Brosnan era they had like a deal with BMW. So I think he drives BMWs. I think Brosnan drives BMWs throughout his kind of tenure.
The fourth movie he has an Aston Martin again.
He has a fourth. Oh yes, that's right. Because of yes, I can picture the finale now. Yes. But I think in the 90s ones he has all BMW.
Yeah, all BMWs.
Yeah. I think maybe it is like a kind of time thing as well.
Yeah, 90s cars had a particular look to them.
That's true, but like also like what you were saying about it looking kind of, being like a kind of posh fancy car, where like it doesn't, now it doesn't seem quite as posh and fancy. It seems more of like a kind of high mid-range car, if you know what I mean.
Mazda Miata.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like, looking back, I think at the time when I was a kid, that seemed like a luxury car. But now looking back, it doesn't seem like a kind of, luxury, like an Aston Martin does, or like, like Ferraris or Lamborghinis do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's that as well. They kind of looking back on it.
Also, wasn't that like the Gap era where Ford owned most of Aston Martin, and like there wasn't?
I think so.
I feel like there wasn't many Astons produced in those years. Like maybe a DB7 was built, but not a lot of them. So it's like, what are you going to stick Bond with? You got to give him something that's like, you're not going to give him a Lancia. Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. You got to give him. Yeah, that's true.
Or Lotus. I was trying to think of something made in Britain, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they have given the underwater car was a Lotus.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, damn it, we said we weren't going to talk about the whole franchise. We've done terribly at this job.
It's hard to isolate this from the whole. It's like saying, let's stare at this one dot and not look at the whole painting of an expressionist. The one that Cameron Fry stares at.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very true. And talking about that, just after we have our little visit with Q.
Oh, wait. My favorite line, my personal favorite line of any Dalton movie, or not Dalton movie, Brosnan movie. That's my lunch.
Yeah.
Where he picks, don't touch that, that's my lunch. Picks up his sub sandwich or something.
Yeah. Also, I just love, it's one of my favorite things in all Bond movies, when Bond is just like fucking around with stuff, and then Q kind of disapprovingly goes, "Pay attention, Bond."
Pay attention, 007. The exasperated sighs. Doesn't allow him rip to the max.
I love Desmond Llewellyn. He's a great actor. And, it was, obviously he sadly passed away and could no longer play Q and was taken over. But, So, no, that's very good. I like the thing about the lunch. But, talking about things that kind of coincide with other things in the franchise, we get introduced to a CIA agent character, Jack Wade. And, Jack Wade is played by the actor Joe Don Baker, who, and this is kind of cuts against the kind of Bond being all one person, because rather hilariously, Joe Don Baker played the main villain in The Living Daylights only 2 films ago. So,
have you not read my fan fiction where they were separated, they were twins separated at birth?
Yeah.
No, this is your theory that Jack Wade, that they're related, that Jack Wade is related to the villain of The Living Daylights.
Absolutely. Just like how in the Craig era, nope, we promised we were going to stay the Goldeneye. It's, separated at birth. One was a dark side clone, and they're actually both Time Lords, and
okay.
Yeah. By the way, in my fan fiction, James Bond is a Time Lord, so it all makes sense.
Yeah. That's
that also actually does make sense, because Timothy Dalton is like King of the Time Lords, if you remember that.
Yep. Yeah. He plays Rassilon, the legendary leader of the Time Lords.
So don't worry, we're not talking about other Bond movies anymore.
No,
we're on different franchises. Yeah. Which is all part of James Bond, obviously.
Which is, through the Timothy Dalton connection is, yes.
James Bond is Rassilon confirmed.
Yes. So he is a Time Lord, so he's the leader of the Time Lords. Bond is the leader of the Time Lords.
It's just the fan theory that every piece of British television or cinema are all linked together into one.
And you can thank Red Nose Day for that. Most of the crossover stuff or any of the charity stream days.
Oh, right. Yeah, with the specials like the Five Doctors and so. Brandon, you're creating new tangents that you can't expect to come up in this episode.
Jack Wade.
Jack Wade. He's a fun character, also played by a Bond villain.
Next. No.
He gets cars started with a sledgehammer.
Exactly. And then
I'm just patiently waiting until I could connect this to the Harry Potter universe.
There you go.
I'm sure there is a connection, probably.
It's coming up real quick.
Yeah, I know what gonna happen.
I know what we're going to do. Connect it to. How could we possibly connect it to the Harry Potter franchise? That's impossible. Oh wait, in the next scene we meet Scottish actor Robbie Coltrane. I wonder what other iconic franchise he stars in.
With his wife that I did not I was like, wait, is that Minnie Driver?
Right. I wrote the exact same thing. I totally forgot she cameoed in this film.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Minnie Driver did not hit her big break until 1997, Good Will Hunting. This came out in 95, and she is the mistress of Robbie Coltrane's Valentine character, the woman that is singing Stand By Your Man so horribly that Bond gets to make the crack. Who's strangling cats over there?
Yeah.
And I didn't. So you guys picked up on it early. I didn't realize it until I was watching the credits, and I kind of glanced up again and said Minnie Driver. And I was like, no way.
There's like a close up of her face. Like at first I was kind of like, oh, is that? No, it can't be. And then there's a close up of the face, and I'm like, that's Minnie Driver.
Yeah.
I was like, who is she? She looks so familiar. I'm sure she'll be in another scene.
Yeah.
She is.
I was in the same way. I kept looking, and then I was watching it through Amazon Prime, and I paused it, and it
the X-ray came up?
Yeah, underneath it said Minnie Driver. Like, oh, it is, yeah, okay.
And, I mean, this scene is useful in some ways. We get some information. We get a kind of historical lowdown about, Lien's Cossacks that seems kind of out of nowhere, but, will tie up later.
It ties up, but then it doesn't.
But
they always betray you.
Yeah.
Apparently, yes. That's what they're known for. I've not done the historical research on Lien's Cossacks and how much of that is historically accurate about them fighting on the Nazi side during the Second World War and all that stuff. So, history buffs out there, I'm sorry to disappoint. But after this scene, which is quite a fun scene, because like you say, you get some fun banter. Brosnan says, like, the thing about strangling the cats, and then Robbie Coltrane kind of shoots at the chair next to him, and then he goes, oh, yeah, very talented girl, like, after he says, like, oh, that's my fiancé, and shoots at him. So they have, like, some fun banter, and I kind of wish that Robbie Coltrane was, like, a bigger part of the film, because, like, his Russian gangster character is very fun, the little glimpse you get from him. And again, he has good chemistry with Brosnan.
Which is why they bring him back.
Yes, which is exactly why they bring him back. Because I think everybody kind of liked him in this film.
Yeah.
But we've got to talk about one of the most fun scenes in the movie just after that. Which is, so this is why, like, Bond is a terrible spy. Bond is on this top secret mission. He's just got information from his Russian informant. And so what would his next move be? What would his next clever spy move be? Anybody?
I'm going to guess he goes to a Russian bathhouse.
He goes to a Russian bathhouse to have a nice, relaxing time in a spa pool. That's that's exactly what he does.
I mean, that's what I would do. After that long time of, doing spy stuff.
He had some time to kill before he had killing to do.
Yeah. You have to have those muscles all loosened before the killing starts.
I mean, I don't know if you ever tried sex foo without loosening your muscles first. It's rough. No pun intended.
So, since you brought it up, Brandon, yes, he goes to the spa, and as you've nicely dubbed it, sex foo, which is what happens. We have, I can't believe I've written this in one of my script notes, but we have a sex fight at the spa.
I mean, that depends on your definition of sex.
Well, and what's interesting, so in my head, seeing this but not returning to it after a while, I thought they actually hooked up, but no, it's just this scene. Mm-hmm. And then, so he's trying to break away from her. He's fighting her, but then he's also kissing her too. Like what's going on here, Bond? Do you not want to, or are you enjoying this part?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think this technically counts as progress because, there's a common trope in Bond movies. Like, if this was an older Bond movie in, the 1970s, what would have happened? There would have been a sex fight, and then there would have been actual sex. And the power of Bond's penis would turn the woman from a villain to a hero. That's what would have happened.
Whereas in this one, he slams her against walls, and then someone tries. She has one extra henchman. Was her plan to not kill him with sex and just actually have sex with him and have her henchman kill her or kill him? Because he throws the bucket of hot water at the other henchman, which clearly knocks the other henchman out for the entire rest of the time. And he burns her on the hot grate in the sauna type room to get her vice grip off of him.
Yes.
I mean, if anybody found these script notes, they'd be like, what is going on? It's written down here, sex fight at spa, stroke, burns her arse.
What's clearly happened is a PA for Austin Powers and a PA for Goldeneye bumped into each other with loose scripts, and then they just kind of pushed their papers back together, not realizing they swapped a few scenes. And then that's how it made into the movie.
That even goes into what I was going to say with the next scene when he gets captured. He is captured, I count 3 or 4 different times by somebody who knows James Bond. And it goes back to the Austin Powers of just kill him.
Yes.
But he doesn't.
There's a few points later on where I'm like, why is Ourumov, the Russian bad guy, the general, yes. Why is he not just shooting Natalia? Yes. I gotta remember these names. Natalia. Why is he just not shooting her? Why is he taking her in a car?
Yeah. Because they wanted her dead anyways. It's not like...
Exactly. She is the loose end.
Yeah.
That is true. There is a certain flaws in the kind of... I mean, this often happens in Bond films. Because we get, more funny banter between Onatopp and Bond, where, she's like, oh yes, once again, the pleasure was all yours. And then he very roughly karate chops her in the back of the neck.
With his gun.
Yeah.
So, there's kind of small steps towards progressiveness, but at the same time, he just bashes a woman in the back of the neck to knock her out. I guess we're supposed to think, oh well, she's a heartless killer and stuff, so it's okay.
Or progress.
Or progress. And then, yeah, basically, instead of Trevelyan, who is revealed to be like, oh, he's the actual big bad, he's not dead, by the way, as we've already flagged up. Instead of him getting Bond killed, he has Bond knocked out by a kind of like knockout dart, and then ties him into a helicopter with Natalia. And this is the first time that Bond and Natalia meet. We've done a very bad job of telling Natalia's story in the film.
She made St. Petersburg. She borrowed some computers, and then Boris found her, and then she went to a church, and then she got picked up by her and Xenia.
Xenia.
Done.
Xenia.
Yep.
Xenia Onatopp.
Done. We are caught up on her story.
Yes.
Yes, we are caught up in this story. I should mention that rewatching this, I did think Natalia was a stronger character than I remember. I always imagined her as like one of the really weak Bond girls, that's completely overshadowed by Onatopp, but which kind of is. But at the same time, she's more of a, she gets more to do, and she, even though she is kind of like kidnapped constantly and stuff like that, like a lot of Bond girls, she does have a kind of part to play, and she does kind of have quips back and stuff like that. And she's just a better written and stronger character than I remember. She's not one of the best Bond girls, but like she's not one of the worst either.
I think she was definitely stronger up until they rescued her from the train. And then from that point until she took the helicopter back at the end of the movie to
once
James.
Once they have sex, I agree.
Once they immediately, like, they escape the train and the explosion, and she immediately goes from "Who the hell are you?" to "Hey, wanna bang?" That was the moment where, like, that was such a quick turn.
Yeah.
It is such a quick turn. I mean, it's much like the psychological evaluator at the start of the movie. She's kind of tutting, and then immediately he opens up some champagne, and it's like, oh, okay, let's have sex.
Oh, James. Yeah, especially when not a few moments prior to that, he said, she's the next woman to win Onatopp's racing them in the... Yes, Ferrari.
Like 5 minutes ago, where she was like, oh, right, yeah, okay, this is how you treat women. That's horrible. And she makes a face, which is the appropriate reaction. But then immediately she forgets that, because Bond knows how to neuralize women, apparently.
Time Lord.
Yeah, Time Lord. That's the timey-wimey thing.
So they get captured, they get out of the exploding.
I did want to mention though, because I think it's worth mentioning as well, because it is a common trope that we've come across in this podcast, that in the 90s, you get to be, in an action movie, you get to be a strong female character for the first two acts, and only the first two acts, and then in the final act you become like a kind of damsel in distress or whatever. Generally, that seems to be the way female characters go in 90s action movies.
Well, and this one, it's like it tries to remedy itself by having her do the codes.
Yes.
In the final bit, but then it really doesn't work. I don't know. Like it tries, but it fails at like keeping her as the strong female character.
So I guess we should cut across to probably the most remembered scene of the movie. I think this is a scene that kind of everybody remembers, or that everybody remembers, like from the trailers and all the kind of things you saw on TV of the tank rampaging around St. Petersburg.
And I did not realize, again, you were talking about Bond being a bad agent, how destructive he is. Just running over civilian cars with people obviously in it and just destroying everything.
Oh, that's another classic Bond trope.
Yeah.
So basically, Bond can't kill innocent people, So even though a police car gets run over and crushed by a tank, you still see the police officers exiting said car.
Yeah.
That was impressive, especially after he spent the previous scene killing every single Russian soldier just trying to do their job.
Yeah. Well, I think there's certain, in the Bond worldview, there's certain people who are viewed as innocents.
True.
So within the Bond world, yes, you can't kill police officers, apparently. That's because they were just doing their job. I mean, military personnel, fine, that's okay. But police officers, no. Bond, it's a strange logic, but it is what it is. And also because you had noticed the other bit of major product placement in the film, Brandon, you can tell us about that.
Yes. So as the tank is rampaging through St. Petersburg trying to catch a single car, it plows through a pallet truck of Perrier sparkling water, which I'm pretty sure they do not have in Russia.
No, I'm pretty sure you are right. But obviously one of the official sponsors of Goldeneye, so we got to get that Perrier ad in.
Which was just so weird to see. It's like, why would you want that being your, why would that be the moment you want people to remember from the movie with your advertisement? It's like, have him order a Heineken instead, right?
Yeah.
That's a reference to another Bond movie.
Yeah. I think it used to always entertain me because it used to happen in movies less. Very much the Bond franchise is the forerunner of product placement in blockbuster movies, whereas all blockbuster movies kind of have product placement nowadays. But, when I was a kid, it was I think Bond does it the most hilariously because other blockbusters try to hide it, but Bond always does it in a kind of weird ham-fisted way of kind of what's that you've got? Oh, it's the brand new Sony laptop, is it? Yes, it's super high powered, this Sony laptop.
It's like a Wayne's World.
Fun fact about the 90,000 cans of Perrier that they drove the tank through. They had to spend a week emptying all of those cans so that the cans wouldn't fizz upon impact, because it's sparkling water, not still water.
Yeah.
That's it seems like they just would have bought the cans pre-emptied that. I don't know. There'd be an easier way to go about that.
You'd think that, but then Pierce Brosnan got to bathe in the 90,000 water or 8-ounce Perrier cans.
Yeah. That's what the spa pool was made of.
Yeah.
the sex fight scene.
Yes.
That was part of his contract.
Absolutely.
I bathe only in Perrier water.
So the tank ends up, they get away and he sees them get onto a train, which then she meets 006, who talks about how him and Bond used to share everybody, and he tries to force himself upon her. And
she takes strawberries.
Yeah. Until out of the train tunnel, we start seeing the tank creep up.
Yeah, so I did put in my notes. Is Alec implying that James and him regularly had threesomes? That seems to be the implication there.
Yeah. I was reading it more as sloppy seconds, but sure. Maybe at the same time. You never know. They were brothers.
They were very close friends. I was like, okay,
so this is the tank showing up. This is another part of the Time Lord lore. The tank is a TARDIS because there's no way he could have driven the tank because he saw the train leave
Yeah.
There's no way that he could have driven across St. Petersburg to the point. Oh, by the way, welcome back to Brandon's.
Brandon's geography corner. I was thinking
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yes. There's no way that you could drive a tank across St. Petersburg to block a train. Let's say 10, 15 miles out of the town in a random tunnel. Because if they were by the watery parts of they were by the watery parts of St. Petersburg. There's no way he could have beat the train and got in front of it by the time they got to anywhere that was that rural. So thank you for part one of today's Brandon's Geography Corner. Next is Brandon's Physics Corner if we ever reach the end of this episode.
We shall do. We shall do.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not looking good.
We will endeavor to do that. Don't worry. I mean, like, because we've got a lot of this one chat out of the way, on the next episode, like, Tomorrow Never Dies and World Knows Not Enough, we'll actually discuss probably just purely the films, I guess.
I disagree.
Yeah, no, okay. Objection.
And that's why Brandon was not invited back.
Yeah.
So, like, my point, like, logic point was less to do with that. I mean, there's certain things I just accept in action movies of being like...
That a train, that a tank can...
Yes, of course, you know, all the kind of...
Teleporting tank.
Yeah. The teleporting tanks kind of stuff, all those kind of logical flaws. I'm like, it's an action movie, whatever, you know, like these things happen. What I was more curious about is like when characters who act one way and seem clever, but then like act another way in like certain specific moments because the plot says so. And that was more my my sticking point of like...
Ram the tank?
Basically, yes, they go to ram the tank. And why would Alec believe that Bond would stay in the tank after firing him?
Well, that's I mean, it goes with even beforehand of working with Bond regularly, and he just keeps letting him live to talk more. You know, it feels like, as much as I like the villain of 006, he's not a good villain in the same way that Bond is not a good agent. But I guess, all James Bond villains are the same in that sense.
I guess so. And I guess, but those things are more the things I get hung up on, of, 006 in some ways always seems one step ahead of him, and in other ways, just seems like an idiot.
Yeah, because he's supposed to be, he was the better agent, I thought, is what they hint at, kind of.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I think the charitable, nuanced look at this is that Bond really messes with Trevelyan's head, especially since he's been fuming over the fact that Bond set the timer to 3 minutes instead of 6 for the last 9 years. So Bond is his weak spot, and a very charitable excuse for the writing staff is that Bond makes Trevelyan blind to more logical things, which even happens towards the end of the movie.
Well, and you get the line too, where he says, I was even thinking about asking you to join me on this. So I guess, there is that element that he cared enough about Bond to ask him, even though
got those unresolved things going on. Also, in my notes, I said, you can't ram a tank, ellipsis. And then the next note is, I guess you can ram a tank. And then the one after that is, how many bullets are in that single AK-47 that Bond took from the interrogation center?
Things like that never bother me, because I always, it's the same in Dirty Harry movies where it's how many, or what.
How many bullets did I shoot?
Yeah, exactly. Or
you feeling lucky, punk? I don't know why I'm using a weird, creepy accent for Clint Eastwood, but sure.
Or if you've ever seen like those kind of like those Second World War movies from like the kind of like late 60s, and stuff like that. The kind of stuff like Dirty Dozen and Where Eagles Dare and stuff like that, where there's just firing machine guns for like hours, and you're like, oh, what? It's the same machine. You've never run out of that magazine. It's like anyway.
So basically, they are able to. I'll move the plot forward.
To Cuba. Let's just go to Cuba.
Yeah,
we go to Cuba.
They have sex.
One question. One question. Did you guess, at what point did you guess chair? Because I guessed chair back when Boris typed the password in.
Me too. Yeah. I thought it was going to be something trickier. I was like, no, chair seems like a very easy answer. So I'm not going to, obviously it couldn't be chair.
Just to coincide with the year, because they both came out in 1995, it's very much like the riddles in Batman Forever, where they're all kind of like,
riddle me this,
work them out,
And
afraid of the big black bat.
In theory, you could take a chair with you somewhere.
That's true.
Yeah,
but normally
if it was a folding chair,
So you weren't that smart, Boris. You didn't think that through.
I guess so. We already did talk about the part where they immediately hook up after the.
Yes, we talked about the broody beach scene, which is really pointless.
I did forget one thing. While he's like brooding on the beach, the first moment when she walks up to him, it's just a shot of her crotch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like from Bond's point of view, you're just staring at her crotch. And I'm like, why is this shot?
Yeah.
And then it made me think, what is the age difference between Timothy Dalton and Isabella can't say that last name. And Natalia, it's 18 years. So I cringed at all the Bond love until we got to the next action scene.
Yeah. So they meet the CIA agent again, who says that they're not going to, or there is no satellite. I guess here's some plot points.
Hey there, Jimbo.
Yeah. But keep it under, well, he says 600 feet. Natalia says 500 with the plane if you want to scope out Cuba. And then we get into brooding.
Also amazing. So I think this was the most classic Bond moment when they're in that like Cessna light plane that they're flying. Cause you could see it's like old school blue screen and they're just like in a cockpit, kind of just like a static cockpit, and the camera is definitely like moving around them, and they're just like lean to one side and then look out the other side, and it's just like it looks so bad. This is 1995. Jurassic Park came out in 92. 93, excuse me. It just looks so 70s. Like that entire scene, and I loved it for that reason. But also, if I didn't love Bond movies, I'd be like, why does this look so bad?
Because they spent all their money on the tank scene or something.
But Perrier sponsored that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interjected. Tangent over.
So they, he's brooding about 006, and she kind of talks about boys' toys or men with guns, and then she goes to leave, and he force kisses her, and then they have sex. And that brings us to them flying around.
Yeah. I think like, I did want to mention as well, like you mentioned there about the age difference of like, she was born in 1970, he was born in 1953. So that's like 17 years, which, looking back on it seems kind of gross to us or whatever, but like that was like the standard. Like, like at the time, like a leading lady was frequently like 20 years younger than her
that's
leading
true.
man. Like that just was accepted at the time, kind of thing.
And pretty in line with most of the Bond girls up to that point, anyway.
Oh yeah, and some of the later kind of like the age differences between some of the women in Roger Moore's film, particularly like the young ice skater in For Your Eyes Only. She looks like barely out of her teens, and he's like in his 50s, and it looks real creepy.
which they lampoon really well. If you've never watched Archer, I think it's a season 2 or 3 episode. Right. They do like that exact thing where it's like it's a 16-year-old Austrian girl, and they're in like they're in the snow, and Archer's like, she's coming on to me. I don't. This isn't. You guys got to believe me, and it is very funny to see that flipped in a non-creepy way.
Yeah,
that's the one? Yeah, where he somehow ends up naked too because
yes. And she also ends up naked at one point.
Yeah, and so he's holding her to keep her warm because they're in the snow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And everyone's just like, "Oh, come on, Archer."
Yeah.
I did like one of the kind of little moments that I wanted to mention, just because I think it's fun, because I think it's just like put in there by the director, is when Jack Wade and Bond and Natalia are having that conversation about secret satellites, and Natalia says, "Oh, it's just like you have those secret transmitters in New Zealand," and New Zealand seems like a random stretch until you realise that Martin Campbell is a New Zealander. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Have you seen any of those secret satellites?
I have not seen any of the secret CIA transmitters that are apparently dotted around this land. But maybe they're in the South Island, who knows?
Yeah.
That could be. I just wanted to say, in my notes, I wrote, the jungle level in GoldenEye 007 sucked. That was the one where Onatopp's like at the top of the tower with the drone guns, or not the tower, but like you have to climb up to where she is, and she always just kills you with the stupid guns before you.
Which
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say for the movie, because I remember the game, and then watching this movie, I was like, oh, this fight's really quick.
Yes, same here.
Yes, it's much quicker than I remember. I kind of thought it was, in my head, it was much more drawn out. And the other thing that I kind of wrote in my notes that I thought was kind of weird is when they crash the Cessna and both Bond and Natalia pass out, and then Bond wakes up, and then he wakes up and he's kind of blearily eyed looking at the helicopter, and it feels like a Vietnam War movie moment. I was like,
a little Saving Private Ryan moment.
Yeah, or something like that. I was thinking more like kind of Apocalypse Now, kind of, when like,
visually like that, but just like in the days, like, that one scene from Saving Private Ryan. But yeah, and then he just watches as the woman with the thighs comes barreling down at him, or rappelling down at him. Which is where I noted she really loves killing people with her thighs.
Yeah. She does. She does. Also, we should have mentioned, actually, Famke Janssen, as we have already mentioned, is amazing in this film, and the sheer commitment and glee she reads every line with is great, and like all her kind of get-ups are really fun as well. And one we should have mentioned when it happened, but I forgot about, was like when they go to get the GoldenEye satellite, and with General Omarov, and General Omarov types in his code and stuff like that, and it all seems very official, apart from the fact that Onatopp is wearing a completely skin-tight leather military uniform that makes her look like she's walked directly out of a Berlin sex club, rather than any sort of military unit.
That's a good point.
I will say, she is, I mean, if one person in this whole movie, I don't know, she feels like she's head and shoulders above everybody else watching it this time.
Oh, Famke Janssen is very much the MVP of this movie.
Yeah.
I disagree. Robbie Coltrane stole the show.
No, like Robbie Coltrane is great. I really like Robbie Coltrane in this, and I can see why they brought the character back because it's a cool character. But no, I'm giving my MVP award to Famke Janssen. Craig, you're the deciding vote on the most valuable player of Goldeneye.
I mean, since I said it, I'd have to say, yeah, Onatopp.
I mean, I'll give you the dedication to the role and the over-the-top like commitment to the character. Great, but at the same time, she's very one note.
I guess so.
Whereas Valentine had some depth and some humor, and I secede to your guys' MVP nominations, but I just had to get that in there.
Okay.
That's I'm not what she said.
Okay, I can definitely understand your position, but at the same time, she is kind of one note, but it's like I say, it's the gleefulness and the committedness to the performance. Yeah. Every line
captivating,
with a smirk, and it's just like you can't take your eyes off her.
And then she gets unceremoniously strangled by an exploding helicopter.
Because she always did love a good squeeze.
I always loved that line. I think.
That might have been the tipping point. Like, I was like, if you have one more like that, Bond, I am going to put this into the Roger Moore bad territory of Bond films.
Oh, dear.
So, after she's killed, we find out that the satellite hasn't been tracked because it's under basically a big lake. And so the satellite starts raising up, and as the lake is draining, and that's the dish, and everything else is the secret vessel is basically above that. Or not vessel.
Which, again, when the lake is draining and the satellite comes up, that does very much feel like a kind of classic Bond, you only live twice, underground volcano layer type, stuff. That feels very Bond.
But at the same time, that's actually the Arecibo Observatory, which is a radio telescope, or it used to be, in Puerto Rico. And why would you need that big of a satellite dish to reach the Goldeneye? Like the satellite dish they had at the facility in Sarajevo, was that where it was? The Russian city that they're in, where the first.
It was. I can't. It was in Siberia. Sarajevo was in like Bosnia, so totally different.
It's something with an S, and I apologize. I apologize to everyone for getting that wrong. But either way,
you Americans and your lack of knowledge of European geography.
I knew it sounded wrong coming out of my mouth, but it's their satellite dish was nowhere near the size of the satellite dish used at in Cuba. Why? What was the purpose of the giant satellite dish?
Because it looks cool.
Pretty much. It's pretty
okay. All right.
Yeah. And then, does anybody want to explain? Craig, you're a good explainer. You can explain to the audience what 006/Alec Trevelyan's dastardly master plan was. That was written on the back of a fag packet.
Yeah. So he is going to use the Goldeneye. He's basically going to rob the Bank of London.
Bank of England.
Bank of England. Take all the money, then use the Goldeneye, and it will send England into the Dark Ages, while also kind of erasing any, also erasing any evidence of him taking all the money. And, all of their financial information, their criminal records, everything will just be completely wiped out because of this, the Goldeneye. And that's basically it. And Bond even calls him a petty thief. And Yeah. that's
And
the whole thing.
That gets his goat too.
Yeah.
Yes, because he's not just a petty thief, he also wants to start a global recession by taking out one of the main stock markets of the world.
Yeah. And
All
Boris,
the while.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. And then, Natalia is basically reprogramming and sets it up and puts in new codes. So the satellite is now crashing into Earth and Boris has to fix it. But because of his ego, he wants to do it himself because obviously she's only a level 2 programmer and he's Boris. And
he is invincible. Oh, and at one point, he accidentally picks up Bond's pen instead of his. Which
it's the pen. I don't think we mentioned it, the pen itself. With 3 clicks, it arms the bomb. With 3 clicks, it kind of unarms it. So he has this nervous tick where he flips the pen around as he's trying to figure out these codes and he's clicking randomly. And so Bond, as the gun is to him, with the number 4 time that he probably should have been killed, but 006 just lets him live. Bond is cautiously watching how many times Boris is clicking that pen. And finally he kind of messes up and he does the clicks and drops the pen.
And I did want to mention there that Bond movies are generally better at being action movies than being spy movies. So they're generally better at like action set pieces as opposed to suspense and tension. But I think they do wring out the tension of the pen bomb thing quite well in that scene of the kind of glancing back and forth between looking at Boris and then cutting to close-ups of Pierce Brosnan's face and stuff like that.
Agreed. Yeah. And since they accidentally shot some sort of fuel canister earlier, gasoline has been spilling throughout the facility, and Bond manages to knock the pen into one of those gasoline pits as it explodes, causing the entire place to explode for some reason.
Yes.
Because it's an action movie.
Yes, of course.
Everything explodes in it. Everything is flammable and explosive in an action movie.
But at some points too, even after the explosion, there's a slight moment where it feels like Boris is still, like, he gets up and he's still trying to crack the code. Like, everything is blowing up. Like, how would these computers be working anymore?
Well, he is invincible.
Yes.
Indeed he is.
So they escape into an elevator and get to what the video game refers to as the cradle.
Yep.
Which is the middle part of the radio transceiver on the observatory or the satellite dish. So it's kind of suspended in the air. And welcome back to Brandon's geography corner. It's suspended in the air 150 meters.
I was like, we're still to the end of the film where you said that you teased a kind of part 2 to geography corner, but like, yeah, okay, cool.
It's suspended 150 meters in the air for our metric friends, and 492 feet above the satellite dish. Just keep that in mind. And from that distance, a human body can fall and hit terminal velocity at 124 miles per hour. That's all I'm saying. And then we can put a pin in it and come back to it after we discuss the final showdown.
Okay, good. Because I'm glad you're going to talk about this, since when I watched it, it's another one where I forgot how far that fall was, and then watching it happen, like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So in the final showdown between Trevelyan 006 and Bond 007, they end up at the bottom part of the cradle, which technically never existed. I think that's an add-on for the movie, for the tension, but yet again, Bond is dead to rights by Trevelyan, but he has a clever little switch that he flicks, and then the floor pops out from under him, and he rides an escape ladder, yes, all the way down to this random platform which has no use. And instead of just standing there and shooting him, Trevelyan has to chase after him and knock him down, because he's a mustache twirling villain at this point in the movie, instead of something nuanced and interesting.
He had a full. It's not like he was out of bullets or anything. I thought about he has the gun, and then he just kind of sets it down.
Oh well, no, he is out of bullets. That's right.
Oh, okay.
You're right. I'm pretty sure he's out of bullets.
Oh, I didn't think he was. I thought he was. I don't know.
It's undetermined whether he's out of bullets or not. But anyway, he wants to strangle Bond with his own bare hands. That's what he wants to do. Like you said about giving them leeway, obviously he always loses his head in front of Bond, so he wants to strangle him with his bare hands. But that doesn't go quite so well.
No, although he does manage to give him a second kick that almost throws him all the way off. But Natalia manages to get a helicopter that was supposed to be support for Trevelyan. And then, I forget, do they grapple or something? And he falls and Bond catches him by the foot.
Yeah, and it seems like Bond is going to save him or something for a second because, and then 006 says for England.
For England, James.
Yeah, and he goes...
Which is a callback to the start of the movie where they both say, for England,
yeah.
And go on with the mission.
That was their bro language.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But there's no, for me.
And then drops him.
Yeah.
150 meters or 492 feet, more or less. Where again, he would have reached terminal velocity before splatting against the ground, which, he does and survives.
With just a bloody nose.
with like a bloody nose. I mean, I assume a broken back or something because he's not moving, but, he's still like coughing and like alive by the time he's at the bottom of that thing. And there's no way in heck, unless he had some way to stop his drag, which you see the ragdoll that they dropped, does not.
It just kind of looks like he got the wind knocked out of him.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like, that's a 150 meter drop. It's a 500-foot drop, more or less, and he would not be alive. But he's alive enough to see the entire cradle fall on him.
Yes.
And then he's dead? ?
No, I think he is dead at that point. It is just one of those things of like, we have to have a hilariously over the top villain death, and it is. Even though it makes no logical sense whatsoever. And like, when he kind of coughs and kind of like he's been winded or something, at that point you are kind of, he's about to
get up.
Yeah, even though I'm quite happy to suspend my disbelief in lots of things, like with the earlier tank stuff as well. But even I was like, really? It's like, he should be very, very dead. But it's still quite a fun, it's still quite a fun thing. And then we get one last ironic, I am invincible! And then, Boris gets covered in liquid nitrogen and, frozen to death.
Yes.
And then we get one last scene where we get the typical kind of Bond and Bond girl. They're in a tryst. They're about to have sex outside. But then they're interrupted by CIA agent Jack Wade and also a group of Marines who were pretending to be bushies.
The entire time.
Not helping Bond or anything, just pretending to be bushies.
Which apparently Bond, the secret agent, did not notice all of these Marines as bushes as he was just in the middle of what is like 30 men.
Or did he?
Oh, yeah.
Possibly he did. Possibly Bond likes an audience that.
Yeah.
So that's a staple of this era of Bond, I think, because at least the ones that I remember, that they're trying to at least get in contact with him at the end of the movies.
Yeah.
And it's like that scene in The Fifth Element where
I think the one that always sticks out in my mind is the end of Moonraker, when they're like on the kind of camera on the like space shuttle, and he's basically getting on with Roger Moore is getting on with the Bond girl, and I think it's M says, "Bond, what are you doing?" And then Q goes, "I think he's attempting re-entry." So that's the kind of peak of those types of scenes.
And yeah, so he promises her what they won't travel by train or plane for a bit or something. I don't know.
Well, then they go in a helicopter.
Yeah.
Not gone well for them in the rest of the movie. But then, you know what the good news is? We've reached the end of the movie. I don't know. Brandon didn't think we would do it, but we did. We did. We've covered all of Goldeneye in a kind of weird, wacky order, but we covered it all. We talked about it all. We ticked off all the major staples, the cars, the theme song, the hench people, the villains.
Hot shots.
Yes, we did it all.
I will say,
Product placement. Yeah.
I will say what was interesting about a Bond movie versus the other episodes we've done is all the other ones, it seems like we've had like all this build up, all this kind of world building plot stuff, having to explain everything in the first half, and then the second half is like, okay, now all these things kind of unfold and it's very simple. Where Bond, it does feel like it's just throughout. There's not a point where it just got really simple. You know?
That's true. It stays convoluted to the end, because generally the master plan is something that you're like, what? Wait, does that work? And then you sit calculating it for a while. Like, I'm not sure of the logic of, and the villain would have to guess, and it stays convoluted to the end. That's another staple of Bond movies. But that brings us nicely round to the end of the movie, end of the episode. So it just leaves us to do the plugs. Always the most fun part of the podcast, and the people really want this part. The plugs is what they're really tuned in for. So, Craig, do the plugs. Well, obviously Brandon can do his plugs last because he's the special guest.
Sure. Yep. So Craig Dram, you can find me at Instagram, I guess anymore. Yeah. Besides that, we've been taking a little bit of a hiatus. We'll do the podcast, Bloodhound Picks, where we'll kind of talk about obscure or strictly independent horror films or artists or things like that. The other major thing I am doing is actually a research project that I've only really talked to Scott about, but I'm announcing on this episode, so it'll be special. I'm doing a research project on kind of offensiveness and mostly dealing with comedy, but also there will be some talk about horror and and I've made social media for that called Guilty Animals, and that's Instagram, Twitter, and all the other ones. But yeah, so if you want to follow that process of understanding comedy offensiveness in the modern age, then cool. If not, it's very niche, and I understand you not wanting to.
Excellent. Well, I recommend everybody tunes into that. Brandon.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I host a 90s comedy nostalgia podcast called Namely 90s, which comes out every week on Mondays. And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Namely 90s with a 90s. You can find my personal account at bschwitty on Twitter. And, we're on all major podcasting platforms. But if you are lazy and should like to just type in a URL right now, just type in namely90s.com/listen, and you can find it on your platform of choice. Also, I do some streaming, right now on twitch.tv/Somtendo. That's SOMMTENDO. And that's kind of a wine and video games Twitch stream. I talk and educate about wine while going through the Nintendo library. And yeah, if any of that interests you, check it out. If not, hey, you'll hear me again on this podcast probably. So, wait for then.
Excellent. And basically, the best way you can support this podcast is by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can chat to us on Twitter at All90saction. You can chat to me personally on Twitter if you want, at ScottMurphy85. You can listen to my other podcast, New Horror Express, a fortnightly interview show where I talk to the best indie talent in the horror genre working today. I also have a spin-off of that, the Guilty Pleasures podcast, where I look at 21st century guilty pleasure horror movies. Basically, that is all for this episode. But it just leaves me to say one more thing, and that is All 90s Bond will return in Tomorrow Never Dies.